All right. So my name is Jeremy Etzel. I'm the worship coordinator here at the Well United Methodist. And then on occasion, I bring a message from time to time. You could tell, though, that preseason football has started because apparently they've been pumping that cold air inside this room. I don't know about anybody else. I'm freezing. I should have brought a long sleeve or something. At least I didn't wear flip-flops, so there's that. But I know it's football season because, unfortunately for me, my baseball season ended at week 2. All of you Royals fans know what I'm talking about. I'm not used to that. I'm used to October, where I'm still looking at a chance of making the World Series, but no, we could barely beat the Royals. So it's been a hard time for the Edsel household. But it's okay because football season's here and the Rams are here, and I guess there's that Kansas City team that plays too. I think they play this afternoon, so we'll see how long the sermon takes. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I know this is Chiefs country, and I've got to deal with that. They're a decent team. I'll give them that. They've got a good quarterback. There are other teams out there. I think there's some Packer fans out here. There's probably some Steelers out there. What about those Bengals? Yeah. I could go on. We're not going to do that, though. We're a church that wants to come together, not divide, right? Well, we're in the midst of this series called That's What I Want. I want a world championship team. No, I do, but no, we've been in the midst of this series. We're in week 3 now. In week 1, we talked about I want to live a life of significance. And sometimes that doesn't just mean going after the biggest paycheck, the biggest trophy and award. Sometimes it's becoming the least of these that Jesus talked about so that we could become great in the kingdom of heaven. In week 2, last week, I talked about how we want relationships that flourish, right? And we all want that. But sometimes it takes a little bit of work. We got to take initiative to make those relationships happen. And bigger than all that, we have to set aside time to make that happen. And I know for me, that is the biggest struggle. So as I go forward, I'm going to start carving out time so that I can have those relationships that flourish. And we go to week 3 now, where we talk about how I want a healthy mind, body, and soul. That's a lot. That encompasses our whole entire being. And when I see somebody who is wiser than me, stronger in character, deeper in faith, I find myself saying, that's exactly what I want. A healthy mind, body, and soul, 100% all of it. So let me ask you, anybody else in here, even in the slightest, are you tempted to take the bait on those infomercials that you see on TV? Those ads that sometimes you're laid up, you can't sleep at night. You've got those 30-minute commercials that talk about this one pill will cause you to lose all the weight you've ever wanted to lose. Or there's that one piece of exercise equipment that'll help you get to the beach body that you're looking for. I know we're not anywhere close to a beach, but I can't remember what it was like this piece of workout equipment that would fold up into a little suitcase that you could carry around, but then you could do bench presses on it or something like that. I can't remember what the thing of it was, but I was like, oh man, whenever I get older, I'm getting one of those. I'm going to be so built. And as you could tell, I've definitely made it. Not at all. Or there's those pills out there that'll help your memory. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I wonder if that actually works. I could get a hold of that. I wouldn't have to make these notes every single day to remind myself to cut my fingernails when I get home because I know I'm going to forget. It gets crazy. I wonder if they actually work. If they did, would you? It'd be great if there was that one single pill that would give us a healthy mind, body, and soul, because that's what we want. Whenever we look at ourselves and we take the time to reflect, that's what we want. Even though we don't really want to put in the effort, I think we can at least agree, Christian or not, every person wants that healthy mind, body, and soul. Well, so to get there, obviously, there isn't just that one thing that's going to make everything problem-wise disappear. So I would suggest that we look in the Bible first. Because one day, Jesus was put on the spot, and he was asked, just like Hank mentioned before prayer, he was asked, what is the most important commandment? And Jesus, and all of this was a plot to kind of trip Jesus up and to make a mistake so that they could be like, okay, so you're not even really that great of a prophet, so we don't need to listen to you. But Jesus said, the most important commandment is this: the Lord our God is the one and only Lord. And you must love the Lord your God with all of your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and all of your strength. We get that from Mark chapter 12, Mark chapter 12, 29 to 30. To love God with all of our mind, not just parts of it. To love God with all of our strength and our body, not just pieces of it. And to love God with all of our mind, body, and soul. So let's do a little bit of self-evaluation, because we all need that from time to time. So ask yourself, how is your mind doing today? I know it's early. It's not even 10:30 yet. I know if I haven't had at least 2 or 3 cups of coffee by this time, my mind is shot. So how is yours? Maybe your mind won't turn off. I know some of you are like that, where it's just constantly running. And then maybe some of you just can't even get it going because you're dealing with so many other things. Maybe your mind won't allow you to sleep. Maybe it spins with anxiety and negativity. What about your body? So everybody take a look at yourself. How's it going? Maybe, like myself, we've lost motivation along the way. So I know for me, post-pandemic, after all the things that I went through in it, I don't recommend. I'm still not back to where I need to be lung-wise. I get out of breath just walking up these stairs. And I know that I could probably fix some of that by getting out there and doing some cardio, but I don't feel any motivation to do that whatsoever. Like I'll do bench press, I'll do squats, anything except for get me out there walking and running. Don't want to do it, and especially not running. Ask me to run, ask me to go for a run. I will find every excuse under the sun to not do it. And maybe you're the same, and maybe it's with something else in that aspect that you're just like, I just can't do it. Your weekly exercise consists of maybe just walking to the fridge and back. And maybe you've got a big house, and so maybe that works, and I'm all for that. I did that a lot yesterday. That's what I get for having a day off. Maybe count the steps on your Fitbit while you're doing that. Is that still a thing? I know my iPhone counts all that for me, so it's good. Just got to remember to have it in my pocket while I'm doing it, or it doesn't count. And then, what about your soul? How healthy is it? Maybe your soul is lonely and empty. Maybe it's contaminated by hate and greed and depression. Maybe you have that nagging sense that there's got to be something more to this life that we're living. The good news in all of this self-reflection, which can be depressing at times, is that it's possible, with God's help, to be healthier than you are today. So let's look at 3 practical ways that we can love God with our mind, body, and soul. And here's the first one. Fix your thoughts on what is true. And let's read that together. Fix your thoughts on what is true. And that comes from the Bible. I'm sure it sounds familiar. Paul talked about this whenever he wrote to the church in Philippi. Fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure, lovely and admirable. Think about these things that are excellent and worthy of praise. And that sounds easy enough, right? Just like those 3 simple rules we talked about, some of these things that Paul talks about and Jesus talks about and John and Peter are super easy things to understand concept-wise, but to put into practice, they take habit. I don't think there's anything more mysterious in all of God's creation than the human mind, whenever we really think about how it processes things and works. Think about it. At this moment, you're being impacted by millions, hundreds of millions of bits of information per second. And then those senses that are detected, they're filtered 90 to 98% out, and then the brain processes 2% out of all of that. And then we take that into like 5 to 9 bits at a single time. super complicated. I love to sit at night before going to bed and watch these videos that pop up in my Facebook, for you, the algorithm, however that thing works. And most of the time, it's like science stuff. And I look at how the synapses work and how electricity moves from one place to another and causes the brain to move in this way and that, and how the body works and how we move through it. And it's so complicated that obviously I don't do a good job explaining it up here. But the way that God designed it so perfectly to do so. But even in the midst of all of that, we can find ways to make the impossible possible with making these new habits. Like I was saying, it's impossible to comprehend to the fullest extent of what's going on up there, but it is possible to allow God to access those abilities, to access your mind, and to change the way that we think. Paul wrote to the Romans, "Don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think." And I think about the people that he was writing to, these Christians, these new believers in Rome. And let's be honest, in this time that they were just getting into the time of Nero, where Christianity would be eventually outlawed to the fullest, the Roman community didn't have the highest of standards of morals. And so for Paul to write to these new Christians, it was extremely important to let them know that, listen, while you're there in your home, don't copy the behaviors of the world around you. You're called to be set apart. Everybody's going to have these negative, ungodly thoughts at times. Nobody's perfect. But the people that are most unhealthy in their minds are those that linger on those negative thoughts. It's the linger that lets those thoughts get into deeper parts of our souls and become far more sinful. Let me give you a few examples. At the gym, or for you who go to the gym, I wish I could say I do. I know there are some that do, and I love that you keep Pastor Rick accountable for that. I'm glad that he didn't ask me because I'd be a horrible influence. But for those who go to the gym, at the gym attire isn't what it used to be back in the day, I'm sure. So men, when you see attractive women when you go to the gym, where do your thoughts go? And don't say that out loud. Keep that all inside. She's beautiful. What if? If only. I mean, I'm single, so I can say it. But your opportunity to linger in those moments or not happens within the first few seconds. What decisions do you make to either continue into that linger or stop it dead in its tracks? The behaviors and customs of this world tells us that it's completely harmless. It's not a big deal, but it is. Because those lingering thoughts keep moving and changing. And then women, what about you when you see a handsome man open the door for his wife? Do you think, man, it would be great? What if? And you start to linger on the fantasy. Your opportunity to linger or not, again, in those first few seconds, what do you do with it? It's not harmless. Like the world would have you believe, it has the opportunity for more. Or maybe, men and women, you allow yourself to linger in the land of Ur. And what is the land of Ur? If only I were wealthier. If only I were prettier. I've always wondered that. If I were thinner, I can't afford that. If I were smarter, man, I wish that. The land of Ur, it's a dangerous place to find yourself in and to dwell in. And lots of us, we're just not aware of the way that we linger. So my first challenge is this one. It's time to think about what you think about. And that can be a little confusing, so I'll say it again. It's time to think about what you think about. So ask yourself, where have I been lingering longer than I should? I'll give you a second. Is it those lustful patterns? Is it the land of the materialistic? Is it jealousy? Escapist thought patterns? In order to fix your thoughts on what is true, holy, and right, and what you really need to think about, then you can name those patterns and do something about them through recognition and prayer. It's one thing to pray and ask for better, but to know where your hurts, habits, and hangups are, to be able to change them, makes all of that possible. It's in saying, God, I recognize this lingering thought is not from you. Move this thought from my mind, and then replace those thoughts. It's said that nature hates a vacuum, and so do our minds. Have you ever tried that whole meditation thing where you can just sit and just like flush everything out and not think about anything? I've not ever been able to do that. Something always creeps in. Whether it's good or bad, I just can't shut it off. But if we could fill that space with truth, we'd be far better off. I know for me, whenever I'm sitting alone and thinking to myself, the thoughts that start to creep in are so anxiety-filled and depression-filled. And all of these thoughts are telling me that I'm never going to amount to the person that God wants me to be. I'm never going to amount to the person that my daughter needs me to be. I'm never going to amount to the person that this church needs me to be, that the band needs me to be, that my coworkers and my friends need me to be. But one of the ways that we can battle those thoughts, because I know I'm not alone, one of the ways that we can battle and win this battle in our mind is to replace those thoughts with affirmations instead. And we may not believe these affirmations at first, but we will the more we make them a habit to say them. Like, for one, my true identity is not in myself, it's in Jesus Christ. I'm completely accepted, I'm totally secure, and I'm deeply significant. And there's scriptures that drive these points home. I have to remind myself of God's truth. Not the world's truth, not my truth, but God's truth. I can linger on thoughts that say I'm a disappointment, that I'm not good enough, but God says, you're the light of the world. You're my workmanship, and I call you friend. I will finish the good work I started in you, and I will never leave you. I would encourage you to write these out. Find the scripture that lines up with them so that you can know that it's based in that deep-rooted scripture. And replace the lies with those truths. When you believe that you're invisible, replace it with God's truth, that you've been established, anointed, and sealed by the one true God. And this is a great way to think about what you're thinking about and then giving those negative thoughts to God instead of harboring them inside. And you'll find that little bit by little bit, God will change and alter the way that you think. Let's look at how to honor God with our body. The Bible gives us this idea. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. So like I asked before, how is your body these days? And we can be honest with ourselves because we're not going to share it with the rest of the room. We're not going to go one by one. That would be so bad for me to do. But how is it? And, as I was going through the sermon and looking at things, I had some realization moments. Did you know that our bodies actually peak once we reach the age of 18? And whenever I read that number 18, I came to the realization that I'm twice that. So I'm like twice beyond my prime. And so what does that mean for the rest of you guys? I'm kidding. No, listen, I feel it. And I believe every single bit of that when I wake up in the morning and my legs don't want to move the way that I need them to move. When my shoulder is like nagging me throughout the entire day. When my mind isn't as sharp as what it should be. When my lungs can't breathe walking up 3 or 4 stairs. I see it. I see how gravity takes over. I see how the wrinkles start to to edge in on the side of my eyes when I smile, which is disturbing to me because I feel like I shouldn't have that yet. But how do we honor God with these bodies that are aging and going through changes? We take care of them for the long haul. So when we look at our habits in life, when we look at the bad habits, and I look at, I say this without trying to sound, what's the word I'm looking for? So I don't struggle with weight, but I do struggle with eating habits. Believe me, if I could gain weight, I would, and I try every single day with my eating habits. Fast metabolism, my mom kept telling me that I would hit it at 20, and then I would hit it at 30, and here I am at 36, and I still haven't hit it, so proved you wrong there. But energy-wise, yeah, like I don't eat well enough to have the energy that I need, and that comes down to discipline. I'll go through phases of like I want to cook all of these healthy things, and I will for a week and a half, and then I'll get tired of that, and then I'll go back to all processed foods again. And then I'll take a week and a half, and then I'll do all fast food because I'm just exhausted with my schedule and I don't have time for this. It all comes down to that discipline problem that we all have in different ways, shapes, and forms. So how's your discipline when it comes to eating well and exercising, which I don't have, and staying healthy? According to the CDC report, 73.6% of Americans are either overweight or obese. And they predict by the year 2050, which isn't that far off from now, 27 years, they say that 1 in 3 Americans will have some form of diabetes. And they say 80% of Americans don't get the recommended amount of exercise. And I'm one of them because of discipline. We're supposed to get 2.5 hours of moderate, intense exercise a week, which to me that sounds a little excessive. Most of us want that healthy body. And if I'm honest, I do too. But just like the rest of you, I want that quick fix rather than that daily discipline that my body needs. I get into the habit of thinking, I work at a machine shop. I work with heavy metal. That's enough exercise, right? But whenever I look back and reflect, what am I really doing all day? I'm standing around pressing buttons. I think I'm getting it at the pet store because I'm carrying around 5-gallon buckets of water here and there and carrying out tanks here and there. But whenever I reflect and look back at it, it's only a couple days a week. And I'm definitely not doing any exercise up here. So maybe a little cardio when I'm playing guitar. But I could get used to this of Crystal leading worship up here and doing all of that. It all comes down to making that disciplinary effort. Now, there have been some exercise programs over the years that have promised that healthy body. And we've got some slides up here. We're going to go through them quick because some of them are a little awkward. There was Jazzercise, right? Anybody take part in that? I'm kidding, you don't have to raise your hand. There was that Tae Bo stuff, which, if I were going to do some, that'd be cool. Kickbox, throw my leg out, throw my back out in the process. There was this thing, a vibrating belt, which I don't even know if that legit actually worked. I don't even know if any of us are alive that would have experienced that. There was the Thigh Master. And then there was the shake weight, and we're not going to get into that and how awkward that thing was. And then for me, the most painful thing on the market was like the ab roller. I've tried that thing. Oh my gosh, it causes so much burning as you're trying to work those abs. I was like, I don't need this. 6-pack, no thank you. 6-pack of root beer will do just fine. And there's nothing wrong with those. I'm sure they all work in some way, shape, or form, minus the vibrating belt thing. Again, I can't process how that actually burns fat. But there's nothing wrong with those things. But what is wrong is believing that it's my body and I can do whatever I want with it. And I'm sure we've all said that. And I know that we all live in a culture where, and yes, body positivity is a great thing. But in the midst of that, I think we kind of come to that conclusion of, I can do whatever I want with it because it's mine. But if we follow Jesus, it's not ours. In fact, it says, do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own. You were bought at a price. Therefore, honor God with your bodies. And that comes from 1 Corinthians 6, 19 through 20. Your body belongs to our God. And if your body belongs to God, it's not your own. So how do we honor God with our bodies? Well, let's get practical about it, because that's how we achieve things, is by looking at practical ways to do it, not the impossible. And we start with those short-term, achievable goals. We sometimes have a tendency to focus on these big, giant dream goals of, I'm going to lose 40 pounds in 40 days. And maybe for some of us, we could do that. If I stopped eating for 40 days, I'm sure I could lose 40 pounds. But is it realistic? Not in the slightest. There's nothing wrong with having big, lofty goals that you can achieve over time. But people who get healthy ones are the ones who set those short, achievable goals. So make it a goal to walk or run about 3 to 4 times a week. And when you do, celebrate it. So one of the biggest life-changing things that I did was actually something really, really small. It was almost 3 years ago, season of Lent, where we give up something to honor God, or to, instead of doing this certain thing, we pray instead, or we do something, or we give up something so that we can honor God through it. And one thing that I did was I gave up soda, which seems like a small thing, but when you look at how much Dr. Pepper I was intaking on a given day, it was a big deal. I remember in college, I had this mountain that I built in my buddy and I's dorm room that was, about as wide as this carpet and about as tall as where that cuts off right there, of just empty Dr. Pepper cans that I had accomplished in a 2.5-month period of time. And it wasn't just like a pyramid tower, it was like a big spherical tower thing, and I had a problem. I didn't realize I had a problem, but I always wondered, why did I never have energy for this? Why was I sleeping so poorly? Maybe because I'm downing 2 cans before I go to bed. But I gave that up, and the first week was a little bit hard. There were those caffeine withdrawals. I didn't give up coffee. We're not going to get into making me have to do that. But, man, after I got past that first week, I was like, okay, I did 1 week. I could do 2 weeks for sure. Then I realized I had more ability to get up and do things. I had the ability to go for hikes. I had the ability to sleep longer than 5 hours in a night. And then I got to 3 weeks and 4 weeks. Lent was over, and I was like, okay, cool, I can have it again. But that desire wasn't there anymore. That habit had been created. I had replaced it with water and other sports drinks to give me better things than what soda was giving me. And here we are 3 years down the line, and I still haven't gone back, and I don't plan on looking back. And I'm so much better for it. We can apply that same concept to so many other aspects of our exercise life, of our spiritual life too, for that matter. It's all about coming up with those short-term goals that can become long-term. And then same thing with eating. There's so many resources, like the Daniel Plan. There should be a picture up there of the book. It's about eating mostly meat, fish, vegetables, and fruit, trying to reduce portions and limit carbs and desserts. And obviously, we have scriptural basis for how that works. You had Daniel, who he and his friends were brought in as slaves in Babylon. And they didn't want to eat what the king had. They wanted to eat what they were told by God to eat. And because of it, they were stronger than any of the king's men. And so this book kind of puts in those same practices. We got to use a plan. And then 3, we work that plan daily. We got to get real. Most of us don't have a problem with starting the plan and then even using it, but we struggle with that ongoing commitment. We want everything to be quick and instantaneous, like we talked about last week. We want that air fryer, microwave body, but we can't get that way. Slow, steady habits will get us to where we need to be. some of us believe that lie, that we're so far gone in our habits that we can't make these practices work. And again, I've been there. I am so lazy when it comes to getting up and making effort with a lot of things, if I'm honest. But it's not impossible. God gives us that ability to draw closer to Him and make these things happen. And the final way we love God with our mind, our body, and our soul is to spend time, more time on your soul than anything else. Spend more time on your soul than anything else. And Jesus said, what good is it for a man to gain the whole world, yet forfeit or lose their soul? Jesus had a lot of powerful moments in Scripture, but this one kind of rings out louder than some of the others. You could store up so many things on this earth. You could accomplish so much and go so far. But if you lose sight of where your soul is in all of it, then you've gained absolutely nothing. Nothing is worth that price. But what is our soul? When it comes down to it, when we think about our mind and body, that's kind of like a physical thing that we can envision. But what is our soul? A theologian, Dallas Willard, said, what is running your life at any given moment is your soul. Not your external circumstances, not your thoughts, not your intentions, not even your feelings, but your soul. Your soul is the operating system of your life. It's the biggest part of you. Envision like an iceberg. I know you've seen it said where the 10% is above the water, and then the 90%, the majority of it is all underneath what you can't see. And as human beings, we tend to focus on that 10% that people see. But what's beneath the surface that controls everything, the 90% of us, that's that soul. So like I asked about your mind and body, how's your soul? And take a minute. Close your eyes for a second and think about that. How is your soul? Where is it? Do you experience peace? Joy? Do you feel and experience love? Satisfaction? Are we living with purpose? John Ortberg wrote, if your soul is healthy, no external circumstance can destroy your life. If your soul is unhealthy, no external circumstance can redeem your life. And he says it really well, and I'll read it again. If your soul is healthy, no external circumstance can destroy your life. It is that firm and secure. If your soul is unhealthy, those external circumstances, they can't redeem it either. It's the 90% that makes that difference. Now, I've seen both of my grandparents pass. I was there with them when they did. And I've seen so many people struggle through certain illnesses. You can really tell when you've seen these experiences who has that hope, who has that secure soul, because they know what lies next for them. I remember being devastated to a certain extent to see my grandparents go because they were so instrumental in making me who I am as a person. But to see them so at peace when that time came made me feel better about knowing that I am going to have that opportunity to be with them again someday. And to know that they lived a life that was so secure in their faith and how they knew Jesus. We have this hope as an anchor for our soul, firm and secure. So what the writer of Hebrews said in chapter 6, verse 19. That hope that he's talking about is Jesus. Our faith, our soul, can become an anchor that holds everything together and secure. Because when life throws you cancer, Alzheimer's, sicknesses, financial troubles, parental troubles, the work you've done on your soul, it's going to make all the difference. There's no more powerful way of establishing this life-altering, life-giving anchor than by learning and practicing the things that will help us walk with God. Now, there's a book that this church, we did a study a few years ago, and it was called The Walk, 5 Essential Practices of the Christian Life. And I know some of you guys took that and went through that book. But the book teaches how to be able to walk closer with God through the spiritual practices of worship and prayer and studying, serving, giving, and sharing. Each day, not just a few times a week, but each day we need to look for those times to worship, those times to be silent, times to pray and to study, because it's 100% soul shaping. And it prepares the soul so that it can battle the things like negativity, anger, impatience, lust, greed that continues to come at us day after day after day. So if we want a healthy soul, then intentionally, deliberately commit to finding those quiet places in your daily life so that God can shape your soul. In all of that, I want to share a story. And it's a story that I know you guys all know. A story that we've all heard before, and that maybe sometimes we take for granted, but I feel like it's a story that's worth the reflection from time to time. In the 1800s, there was a man named Horatio Spafford. He was a lawyer and a deeply committed Christian. He invested everything he had into Chicago real estate. But in 1871, there was the Great Chicago Fire. Almost the entire city was decimated, turned to rubble. All of his investments, all of his real estate property, and almost all of his finances were just gone. Which that would be tough for anybody to go through. We're seeing people go through that now in Maui. In 1873, he sent his family, his wife, his 4 daughters, on a ship to England to get away from the city so that he could try to salvage something of their life in Chicago and give them a better life in the meantime. But on that trip to England, the ship was struck by another ship and it sank. And then most of the passengers did drown. Spafford got a telegram from his wife simply saying, "Saved, alone." His 4 daughters had died. I can't even imagine the pain and the heartbreak of not just losing everything that you had worked so hard for, but then to lose your kids too in the process, and still had his wife, but at the same time, what does that do to a relationship? If you grew up in church, you've heard this song. And if you didn't, I'm sure you've heard it at a funeral or two. And since you're here today, you heard it before I got up here. When peace like a river attends my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, you have taught me to say, it is well with my soul. When it all comes down to it, that's what I want. I want to know that whatever life throws my way, whatever temptation, whatever tribulation, whatever exercise plan, whatever things that are holding me back try to overtake me, I want to know that my anchor of security will hold firm and secure in Jesus Christ. So how about you? Is it well with your soul? The work you do on your soul will make all the difference. Whatever life throws your way, your anchor will hold firm and secure in the hope of Jesus. That's what I want for myself. That's what I want for you in this room. And that's what I want for our church as a whole as we take on our new mission and goals. To be a place where people can come and find an anchor for their soul. And for today, that is the good news. Maybe I'll continue to lead people to an act of faith in Jesus Christ. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Would you pray with me? Our Father, it can be so overwhelming in this world we live in to be pressured to look this way or that way, to take care of ourselves this way or that way, to behave this way or that way. God, I pray that we would align ourselves the way that you would have it, that we would offer our bodies to you as a pleasing sacrifice, that we would offer our minds to you so that we would think the way that you would have us think, and that we would offer our whole soul to you so that we can endure anything that this life throws at us, so that we can be secure in you. And it's in your name that